His kiss commanded attention, his hands unwavering, as they tore the straps of my dress, letting it fall away. My husband sat beside me, his eyes alight with anticipation. In that fleeting moment, I stood exposed before him, feeling a vulnerability I hadn't known in years. Welcome to Man's Story, a haven for treasured emotional narratives of love. Remember to give the video a thumbs up, share your insights in the comments below, and subscribe to keep up with our newest narratives. May you find yourself immersed in delightful and tranquil moments. My heartfelt gratitude. Very well, let us proceed. He wished for me to share my bed with another man, not just an average individual, a black man, not just to share a bed with him, but to extend an invitation for my husband to witness it too. I am Ava, now 68, reminiscing about that summer when I was 38, living in a seemingly perfect home tucked away in the suburbs of Houston. The memories do not merely fade as time progresses. Instead, they intensify, cutting deeper with every year that goes by. In the quiet of the dawn, when slumber frequently slips through my fingers, I can feel the weight of that decision pressing down on my heart. My arthritic fingers trace the contours of my face, and I contemplate whether these lines were carved by the relentless march of time or the burden of regret. Choices fueled by passion leave indelible impressions that time itself cannot diminish. This is my epiphany, a tale of caution, a narrative exploring how the unyielding chase for excitement can eventually culminate in a deep feeling of void, echoing through the ages. By that time, I had shared nearly 15 years of my life with Thomas. We had woven together what many called the good life, steady, cozy, and secure, perhaps a touch overly careful, like a gallery displaying the intricacies of our union. Thomas was a software engineer, constantly evaluating, endlessly contemplating, a man who viewed passion as an enigma waiting to be deciphered. Once, I embraced the role of an elementary school teacher, but now I navigate the life of a stay-at-home wife, my identity reshaped as our daughter embarks on her college journey. The silence of our empty house created an echoing void, inviting my own unquenched desires to gently reach out to me in response. It commenced with a delicate dialogue, a soft whisper of aspirations and yearnings, crafting narratives of threesomes, with Thomas watching as I delved into closeness with another. I would gently place my lips against his neck, roll my eyes with a playful demeanor, and dismiss these moments as nothing more than playful antics of the bedroom. As the weeks transformed into months, his tone started to shift. A vision evolved into an adventure. He persistently mentioned John. They asserted that their paths had intertwined at the gym. John was portrayed as unique, a phrase heavy with unspoken certainties. Thomas depicted John as radiating self-assurance, authoritative, embodying a primal essence that my husband admitted he lacked. "He can provide you with what I was never able to," Thomas whispered one evening, his fingertips gliding softly across my exposed shoulder. "Your freedom is at stake, Ava," regarding the feelings I long to convey, yet find myself unable to articulate completely to you. His words felt untrustworthy to me. On that fateful evening at the restaurant, as Thomas took care of the bill, he disclosed that John was waiting upstairs. Everything had been carefully arranged. John's agreement to join me rendered the elevator ride an endless journey. I stared into the mirrored walls, my lipstick perfectly applied, hair elegantly curled, eyes wide with a fear that barely masked the curiosity simmering just below the surface. My heart lamented, compelling me to escape. My body implored me to stay. Just as Thomas prepared to lift his hand to knock, the door unexpectedly swung open. John stood there, his chest exposed, radiating power, his body a canvas of tattoos and sculpted muscle. He looked deep into my eyes, a smile dancing on his lips that suggested ownership, even before I could give my consent. "If you wish for me to cease, merely utter the command," he murmured softly by my ear, his hand already settled on my hip. "Otherwise, you belong to me for the evening." I should have turned and walked away. One should have remembered our vows, our intertwined history, our purported love. Instead, I surrendered to the moment that would inevitably unravel everything. His kiss was commanding, his hands firm as they tore the straps of my dress, letting it fall away. In a heartbeat, I stood exposed before him, stripped of defenses in ways I hadn't felt in ages. Thomas sat quietly in the corner armchair, his eyes locked in fascination as John effortlessly lifted me, as though I were nothing more than a feather. As John removed his clothes, the very essence of my existence seemed to tremble beneath me. My husband watched as another man claimed me, each gesture a commanding touch, leaving me untethered, lost in a realm beyond time, space, and loyalty. I remember Thomas gently placing his lips on my forehead afterward, whispering his thanks, as though I had given him a precious gift rather than breaking something sacred. I caught a glimpse of John, his smile glowing with contentment, and in that moment, it struck me that my life was teetering on the edge of a significant change, marking a clear division between what was and what would be. The morning broke, heavy with sorrow, body, heart, and soul intertwined in a tapestry of pain. My body pulsed in overlooked shadows. The weight of my conscience bore down on me like an immense boulder. Thomas reclined next to me, tranquil and content, while my mind drifted through the tapestry of memories woven with John. Every gentle touch awakened a profound, primal reaction inside me. Every sensation wrapped around me, stirring a deep feeling of vitality that had eluded me for years. For a while, we immersed ourselves in a charming game of house. We played the part of an unremarkable couple. Yet the truth hung in the atmosphere. I had been engulfed, vanquished, unshackled from limitations. With every fiber of my being, I longed for something more profound. A week later, Thomas mentioned that John was keen to meet with me again. I feigned uncertainty, yet my heart thumped with fervent excitement. On the following Saturday, we convened at an Airbnb, where immaculate sheets beckoned invitingly, scented candles danced with a gentle glow, and there stood Thomas in the corner, wine glass poised in hand, quietly watching the scene unfold. John stepped into the room, an unmistakable aura surrounding him, even in the stillness. This moment revealed itself in a manner that was unique, leisurely, deep, and deeply intimate. He relished the act of undressing me, his lips gliding over every inch of my skin, as if he were etching a map into his memory. He guided me over the couch, positioning me with deliberate precision, and enveloped me with a confidence that rendered my knees unsteady. I observed the change in Thomas's demeanor. The excitement in his eyes was now intertwined with a hint of something darker lurking beneath the surface. A profound ache endures. Nevertheless, I discovered a sense of apathy towards everything unfolding around me. My body no longer felt like it belonged to my marriage. It was a grasp of the instant, woven with the illicit, and deeply connected to John. As it came to an end, I discovered myself trembling on the ground. John pulled me near, his arms wrapping around me as he tenderly stroked my hair with an unexpected softness. Thomas approached, his lips brushing against my forehead, the contact lingering longer than it ever had before. He stirs feelings within you that I could never quite reach, does he not? Thomas whispered gently. My silence conveyed a wealth of meaning. In the aftermath of that night, a deluge was unleashed. John reached out to me directly via text, seemingly harmless conversations that suggested profound desires lurking just out of sight. In the quiet embrace of the night, I discovered myself responding, hidden within the walls of bathrooms, my heart racing, fingers wandering without purpose. The addiction ensnared me, weaving its way into my thoughts during dinner conversations, infiltrating church services, and lingering in every ephemeral moment spent with Thomas. Then came the message that would determine our destiny. Would you like to meet with me when Thomas isn't present? I stared at those words for what seemed like forever, my finger hovering gently above the screen. In that fleeting instant, my fingers glided over the keyboard, weaving together the two letters that would inevitably herald my undoing. Truly, our journeys converged at a hotel tucked away on the outskirts of town. Unembellished, stripped of emotion, a mere untamed desire fraught with danger. He pushed me against the wall the moment I entered, kissing me with a fervor that felt as if he owned the very essence of my breath. This time, the charm was not subtle or slow to unfold. An unfiltered, instinctual longing compelled me to cry out for him, as the visage of my husband's face gradually receded into the shadows of my thoughts. As I stepped through the door, I discovered Thomas absorbed in a television program, eager to hear all about my shopping adventure. I turned my eyes away, unable to face the piercing intensity of his gaze. The shower that night was a torrent of scalding heat, each droplet a desperate attempt to wash away the remnants of my betrayal. Yet the burden clung to me, already surrendered to the lurking shadows. John had etched a mark upon my soul that Thomas could never hope to attain. Thomas started to notice the changes taking shape in his surroundings, my meandering reflections in the midst of conversations, the realm I inhabit in dreams, the way I examined my phone, longing for a feeling of connection. It appears that your heart is beginning to lean towards him. Wouldn't you agree? Finally, he ventured to ask the question one evening. I find myself in a state of uncertainty. I whispered, ensnared in the threads of truth, yet immobilized by the dread of exposure. For the first time, Thomas averted his gaze, leaving my forehead untouched by his lips. An undeniable transformation had taken place between us, and we both felt its weight keenly. My meetings with John grew more frequent, discontinued sharing with Thomas. The weight of guilt that had once pressed down on me gradually transformed into an electrifying rush of exhilaration. John awakened in me a dormant power, an instinctual vitality, a sensuality I had yet to explore. I could whisk you away if I so desired, John whispered one evening as I lay exposed in his bed. I laughed softly, but the gravity of the situation hung heavily in the air between us. A part of my soul longed for escape, to liberate itself from the suffocating ideals of my suburban life. In the warmth of Thomas's touch, it was John I felt lingering. As Thomas's tender kiss lingered on my lips, an intense longing for John's fervent embrace surged within me. Every gentle caress from my husband only heightened the wild desire I had discovered in the arms of another man. As the weeks progressed, the tempo of my dual existence found a comfortable rhythm. Thomas masked his true feelings with a veneer of indifference, perhaps believing that I would eventually tire of our playful ruse. Nevertheless, I held back. I plunged deeper into the web of emotions, quietly slipping away as Thomas slept, crafting justifications, living only for those ephemeral moments with John. Then came the night that changed everything. With John poised at our threshold, greeted by Thomas, my hands trembled with eager anticipation as I poured the wine, acutely conscious of the events that were about to unfold. Thomas had not simply lost control, he had surrendered it completely. After dinner, Thomas settled into our couch, the same one where we had intertwined our lives, and spoke words that echo in my thoughts, "I want to watch again." Yet on this occasion, I long to explore the boundaries of your capabilities. His tone was stripped of emotion, almost clinical. As the air thickened with the burden of a fading union, John took my hand, leading me up the stairs, a quiet observer to the conclusion of something that had once been held dear. I stole a look over my shoulder at Thomas, who met my gaze with hollow eyes. That night was merciless. John embarked on journeys into territories I had yet to explore. They cast their barbs, intended to wound, but instead they sparked a fierce flame within my soul, employed my body as though it were his own. As Thomas lingered in the shadows, a glass of wine cradled in his hand, his gaze grew ever colder with each sigh that escaped my lips. "Take note of her," John directed Thomas at one point. "Pay attention to her genuine longings." Thomas maintained a calm demeanor, yet a brief spark of something faded from his eyes in that moment. He beheld the scene as it transpired, reminiscent of a candle snuffed out in a heartbeat, a decade and a half of trust extinguished in a fleeting moment. Nevertheless, I discovered that I could not bring myself to stop, unwilling to relent. The euphoria had transformed into an obsession, and I had wandered so deeply into its grasp that the very notion of clarity felt like a fading recollection. I remember catching sight of my reflection in the mirror across from our bed, cheeks aglow, eyes sparkling with untamed spirit, hair adhering to my dampened skin. The figure reflected before me was nearly beyond recognition. She seemed enchanted, transformed beyond recognition. In that ephemeral instant of revelation, I contemplated whether this strange visage reflected the true essence of my being, concealed beneath the veneer of propriety, beneath the mask of the devoted spouse. As the moment drew to a close, with John having arrived at his conclusion within me, I found myself breathless on the matrimonial bed we had chosen together at Macy's a decade and a half prior. In that moment, Thomas took his first step forward. He pressed his lips to my forehead one last time, but his eyes were brimming with nothing but resentment. His lips grazed my skin, cold and distant, evoking the sensation of saying goodbye to something that had long since vanished. The weeks that followed unraveled like a slow descent into oblivion. Thomas barely spoke, hardly engaging with me at all. What was once a lively marriage has faded into subdued dinners and lonely nights spent apart. There were moments when I caught him looking at me, his eyes brimming with a profound sadness that resonated within me. "I have given you what you sought," he finally uttered one evening, after yet another dinner steeped in silence. "However, in this very moment, every moment spent in your company evokes memories of him." I chose to hold my tongue. What case could I make to support my position? "You're no longer mine," he insisted, his voice quivering with emotion. "It is possible that I hold a measure of accountability for that. Perhaps I fractured the bond we once shared." With the first light of dawn spilling into the room, I stood in a hushed house, the only company being a solitary letter. Thomas had disappeared without a trace. Embrace simplicity. Opportunities for redemption are nowhere to be found. Just the quiet departure of a man who had staked his marriage and lost everything. John lingered for a while, but an unmistakable shift hung in the air. With Thomas gone, the thrilling charm dissipated into mere emptiness. I began to see John for who he truly was, not as a savior or a romantic hero, but as a man who delighted in power and the temptation of the forbidden. With the sound of the final whistle, his fervor gradually diminished. Eventually, the calls faded into silence. The words dissipated like mist in the morning light. In a heartbeat, solitude wrapped around me, devoid of a spouse, devoid of a beloved, simply an empty abode, filled with the phantoms of my own imagination. As the years have unfolded, there are instances when people ask me if I hold any regrets regarding that time. In those rare, radiant moments, I discover the resolve to say no, for within that brief, powerful flash, I sensed an undeniable vitality coursing through me. In the quiet depths of sleepless nights, Thomas's voice echoes in my thoughts. I find it impossible to look at you without feeling his presence loom over us. He vowed to grant me freedom, convinced that it would bring us closer than ever. Instead, it sparked a fire that devoured everything we had built together, leaving me in this moment now, not a partner, not one to embrace love. A woman in the twilight of her years, who bravely reached for the sun, only to see her whole life disintegrate into oblivion. The solitude that surrounds these later years is the price I pay for those ephemeral moments of joy. The empty chair across from me at the dinner table, the coldness of sheets unshared by another's presence, the silence of holidays. These capture the deep impact of unrestrained yearning. My daughter visits occasionally, bringing along my grandchildren, who endearingly refer to me as Grandma, their eyes filled with a sense of awe. An unsettling feeling lingers in the air, woven into the fabric of the tale surrounding Grandpa's absence. Children have an extraordinary knack for detecting when adults are hiding the truth. My daughter has never directly asked about the events that unfolded between us, yet there are times when she seems to think I am oblivious. In those moments, I catch her studying my face, as if she is trying to assemble the pieces of a riddle that still eludes resolution. In my 50s, I embarked on a journey into the realm of dating once again, culminating in a brief marriage at 62 with a kind widower who valued companionship more than passion. Nevertheless, I discovered that I could not sustain it. The shadow of my history, of the individual I used to be, constantly hovered in the distance that lay between us. After a year and a half, we separated amicably. He deserved a love that could present him with a whole heart, rather than the shattered pieces I had to give. There are moments when I contemplate the destiny of Thomas. Did he unearth joy, Did he reshape his life in the company of someone who valued the offerings he contributed? Throughout the years, I have crafted numerous letters, apologies, explanations, and sincere requests for understanding, but not one has ever been sent out into the world. What right do I hold to disrupt the peace he may have found? And what becomes of John? He vanished from my life with the same swiftness that marked his entrance. Years had slipped by, 5 to be exact, since the world as I knew it had come apart at the seams. Yet there I was, wandering through memories, driven by a flickering hope that perhaps, just perhaps, there had been a spark of authenticity in what we once shared. I discovered that he had redirected his affections toward yet another married woman, entwined with another husband who wished to bear witness. We were but mere shadows in the grand tapestry of his unending spectacle. Should you happen upon these lines, you may be at a similar crossroads in your own path. Remember that passion burns brightly but diminishes swiftly, while regret endures indefinitely. What appears to be freedom in the moment can evolve into a restriction that endures for years to come. Did Thomas make a mistake in revealing me? Have I faltered in my yearning for something more profound? The answers evade straightforwardness, yet the outcome was nothing less than disastrous. Some boundaries, once crossed, are irrevocably transformed. Some wounds, no matter how much time passes, remain eternally unhealed. I watch as women of my generation are surrounded by their partners, some of whom they have shared 4 or 5 decades with. I take note of their effortless silences, the laughter they share, and the way they intuitively meet each other's needs without a single word spoken. I watch as they hold on to each other with gnarled hands in the impersonal setting of a doctor's waiting room, facing the shadow of mortality together. Perhaps that was to be our destiny, Thomas and I, growing old together, traversing the twilight of existence with the comforting glow of our shared history. Instead, I face them alone, equipped solely with memories that cut like daggers in the shadows. Such is the nature of longing. It promises everything, claims what it yearns for, and in the end, leaves you clutching only memories that cut deeper with the passage of time. At 68, I have come to realize that the most treacherous phrase in any language is merely this: just this once. What starts as a singular moment can blossom into a pair, then grow into an enduring presence, and finally transcend into eternity, and merely is never just anything at all.